Happy New Year, everybody. As the calendar flips on what was a great NBA season last year, we're on to an even greater one this year. This year's NBA season has been filled with so much offensive talent, so many crazy offensive games that we've watched over the course of the last couple of months. I mean, you talk about Donovan Mitchell's 71-point performance, Luka Doncic's 60-point, 20 rebound, 10 assist game. Giannis Antetokounmpo had back-to-back 40-point, 20 rebound games. LeBron James, Nikola Jokic, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, the list goes on and on and on. The performances have been so great. But we're not here to talk about performances. We're here to talk about teams individually. You know what we do on this channel, man. And there's one team in particular that I really have been wanting to talk about. For this team that we're going to be talking about, we got to head out west and head to Los Angeles. And no, I'm not talking about the Lakers. I'm talking about the Los Angeles Clippers and what they've been doing this season and just how successful I think they can be. Now, the Los Angeles Clippers have kind of went on the radar this season. I mean, after a pretty eventful offseason where you've seen Kawhi Leonard made progressions to come back onto the court, and they made a move to sign John Wall, who had gotten released, the Clippers are looking very, very scary. And in the preseason, a lot of people did see this team as the title favorites, and you can see why, because they have what a championship team needs. You have Kawhi Leonard healthy, you have Paul George, and you have an array of players that give you shooting and defense and rebounding, and it's all brought together by their coach and Tyronn Lue, who's a championship winning coach. But I don't think it's as easy as people make it out to be. On the season, the Los Angeles Clippers are the 6th seed in the Western Conference, and their season has been kind of to start so far, but obviously there's reasoning behind that. So let's dive into it. Let's dive into the Clippers. Let's talk about why their season is a little iffy, why it's been iffy, and if they really are the title contenders that people made them out to be to start the season. So when talking about the Clippers, I think we got to dive into the numbers, because I guess the numbers kind of show a different story. You look at their offensive numbers and it's not good. They are the 3rd worst scoring team in the NBA, which, I mean, you can't even really use offensive numbers anymore with how crazy the league has turned into. But still, efficiency wise, they're one of the worst teams in NBA. They shoot the ball at a great clip, which is very, very great to see. I think that's really all they need, but they're not really a team that makes a lot of free throws. They rebound well, but they don't really pass much. But one thing that really stands out for this team is their defense. That is a area where is a strength, basically. And I mean, it makes sense. You have 2 all defensive players in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and though they don't play much, they still provide you with great defensive impact. Robert Covington and Norman Powell, these great swingmen that obviously excel in the defensive area. There's also guys like Nick Batum and Terrence Mann. John Wall is a pretty decent defender for someone with his injury history and his age and all of that. And you got Zubac manning it down low. And now let's dive deeper into the stars of this team. Now, first talking about Kawhi Leonard, man, his career has been very, very, very interesting to say the least, because he obviously has a Hall of Fame career. We've seen what he was able to do for Toronto, what he was able to do in San Antonio, but since he's got to Los Angeles, it's been pretty much rocky, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's been filled with a lot of injuries. He didn't play at all last season after suffering an ACL tear in the year prior's playoffs, and he's just now getting back to himself this year. And even early on this year, he had a calf injury that kept him out for some more games. And over the last month or so, he's only played in a handful of games. But the games he's played in, I mean, he's looking like Kawhi Leonard. Just talking about some previous games he's played in. On December 31st against the Pacers, 24 points on 8 for 17 shooting. Against the Celtics, 26 points, 11 for 16 shooting. In a game he had against Philadelphia, he had 28 points on 12 and 19 shooting. A 30-point game against Washington. I mean, this is the Kawhi Leonard that we all know. In an interview that Kawhi Leonard had, he basically said that he doesn't care about the regular season, man. He's looking towards the playoffs, and I think that's the mentality for this entire team. Kawhi Leonard was just a Finals MVP 3 seasons ago. I mean, there's not really much to say. He is one of the greatest players to ever play in the NBA, one of the best players we have in the league right now. He's someone who can give you 25, 26, 27 points per game a night, and Defensive Player of the Year defense. I mean, only a handful of guys can do that. He's super efficient. He's a mid-range assassin. He has that clutch gene. He's everything you'd want out of a player. And the number 2 on this team is Paul George. He's the co-star for them, and what a season he's having as well. Paul George is putting together his best season since getting to Los Angeles. He's averaging 24.4 points per game, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. He's shooting just about 46% from the field, 39% from 3 on 8 attempts per game, and he's doing what Paul George normally does. And Paul George is basically the same type of player that Kawhi Leonard is. He is the guy who can give you 26, 27 points per game a night on Defensive Player of the Year level play. His clutch gene has improved over the last few seasons, and I feel like it was that 2021 playoffs that really unlocked Paul George for the Clippers. But for me personally, I feel like Kawhi have really learned to play together over the last couple of years, because you can see as to why it was rocky to start. I mean, Paul George was coming off the best season of his career before he was traded to Los Angeles. He was 3rd in MVP voting. He was averaging 28 points per game and immediately went back to being a second option once again. Kawhi Leonard was fresh off a historic run with the Toronto Raptors. He had just won a Finals MVP and brought Toronto their first championship in franchise history. But I feel like all of that confusion is past them. Paul George always talks about how Kawhi Leonard is the guy on the team and he just follows suit. And that's great to hear from your co-star. At this point, both of them are 32. Both of them are looking to win a championship. Both of them don't really care too much about the regular season. So it makes sense as to why they made some of the comments that they make. And it's a new regimen in this team. It's new culture. So let's talk about those new pieces. Let's talk about the surrounding guys and what makes the Clippers great. There's Reggie Jackson, who found light again in his NBA career with the Clippers. Reggie Jackson always talked about how once he was cut from Detroit, he was looking to retire and how he was in the lowest point of his career. Now he's rejuvenated his career with the Clippers. There's John Wall, who, like I talked about, the Clippers were able to scoop up in free agency. Norman Powell, like people like to call him, is the perfect glue guy for this team. He's averaging 15 points and he's shooting 38% from three on about 4 attempts per game. There's Marcus Morris, who we know to be that grit guy. He's a 39% three-point shooter, the hard-nosed player from Kansas that doesn't back down from anybody. We know what type of timing that Marcus Morris gets into. Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Terrence Mann. These wings don't really all play a lot of minutes, but when they do, they give the Clippers some great play. And then, of course, Ivica Zubac is in the midst of a career year. He's averaging the first double-double of his NBA career. The man in the middle, exactly what they need. He's a lob threat. He's a shot blocker. He's a great rebounder. He does it all. So we can talk about it. I mean, the Clippers got him for essentially free. They traded like Mike Muscala for him. What were the Lakers thinking? And when you dissect a team like that, you can see why nobody really wants to play them in the playoffs. You got your two stars in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, who are two of the best players in the league. I mean, no other team except for the Celtics has a wing duo as good as them. We know how much wings run the league, and the Clippers have invested heavily in that position over the last couple of years. And what's good for them is that they have assets. You know, they have young players that they can move to add maybe another point guard here or another center here to just improve their depths in those positions. So yeah, the record don't really scare me much, man, because nobody really wants to play this team come playoff time. When you have Kawhi Leonard locked in and Paul George locked in and everybody else doing their thing, the three-point shooting as good as it's been, the defense as great as it's been, that's a recipe for success. As long as they can stay healthy and continue to excel in the things that an NBA team needs to excel in, I don't really see anybody beating this team, man. So do I think they're a contender? Man, obviously this team are contenders.